Hey, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 mod review. Today, we're checking out a brand new Institute weapon mod, and that is the Institute Plasma Rifle by Mikolov. This is going to be an interesting new addition and, quite frankly, an upgrade to the vanilla Institute arsenal. I've seen a lot of authors try to make new Institute weapons, and I think Mikolov has really knocked it out of the park with this one. He maintains the vanilla Institute style while still adding some new dimensions and new geometry that make the weapon look a lot cooler, in my opinion. Now, this is not a replacement for the old Institute rifle, but rather something that you can find alongside it. And so matching that vanilla style, I think, is really, really nice, and a good job by Mikolov. Now, something that's pretty interesting about this weapon is it is intended to be an Institute answer to the plasma rifle, but it comes with some interesting quirks. For example, the projectile on this weapon is actually not the traditional vanilla plasma projectile, but rather what the mod author refers to as beam plasma. So it's going to effectively be a green laser, but it is still going to have the standard plasma effects, including the ability to gooify enemies. Now, in terms of performance in game, this thing's actually going to have the same damage stats as the vanilla plasma rifle. However, it is going to use more standardized fusion cells, making it a more efficient ammo type and one that is more common. An upgrade that makes a good bit of sense in the hands of the Institute. They wouldn't want to diversify their ammo types too much, so I think this is pretty fitting and very lore friendly. This weapon, of course, comes with a ton of customization over at the weapons workbench, including stocks, barrels, scopes, everything you could ask for. We'll go into that more detail later, but I do gotta say, I love the attachments available in this mod. It's using a lot of vanilla assets, but it still looks really, really nice. So good work by Mikolov as usual. Additionally, if you want to get your hands on this weapon, it is added to the level list, which is a huge plus. It is injected via script, so there shouldn't be too many conflicts, and it'll start spawning over on the Institute leveled list after level 10. Really quick, there's also some neat behind-the-scenes features of this weapon that have some really cool integrations in your load order. First of all, this is using pretty much all vanilla assets, so any skins that you download for this mod, so any retextures will apply automatically, which is really, really cool. So you can have some cool black retextures or chrome retextures for the Institute weapons. It will apply to this one as well, so it'll match the rest of your Institute look, which is pretty cool. Additionally, that means it's also going to work with Creation Club skins. So if you're a fan of the Creation Club and you use any of the skins from that, they will apply to this weapon as well. Additionally, because it's all vanilla assets, this mod is super, super tiny, meaning you can download this one in your load order and not even worry about the size, as it is mere kilobytes. I think that covers most of the basics. Now let's start to get a little bit more in depth, starting by checking out the stats on this weapon. So here we have the regular version of the Institute Plasma Rifle. You will notice a very, very small issue, but it's so minor. It is that the weapon is known as the Plasma Rifle. That's just because it has the same naming conventions as the standard weapons in the game, so it might need to be tweaked just a little bit, but it is kind of funny seeing that up on the screen. Anyways, back to the stats. This thing has a base ballistic damage of 24 with an additional 24 energy damage, the exact same as the vanilla plasma weapons, but of course this one is using fusion cells instead. This thing has a fire rate of 33 and semi-automatic without any attachments, a range of 119, an accuracy of 148, a weight of 4.8 pounds, making this thing pretty light since it is mostly plastic, and a value of 154 caps. Altogether, pretty balanced stats. The only thing that might prove to be any bit of an issue is that this thing does start spawning relatively early at level 10, but it's only going to be spawning on the Institute. So depending on how quickly you pursue the main quest line, you may not even find this thing until way later in the game. Now, really quick, let's go ahead and talk about animations. Even though this weapon does use vanilla animations, I like to show them off regardless, just so you can ensure that there's no clipping or any issues like that, or maybe you just don't like the reload and don't want it in your game. That is what this showcase is for, after all. Let's go ahead and check out the reload animation. So as you can see, Mikolov opted for the top-loaded plasma rifle animation as opposed to the regular laser rifle animation, and I think it works pretty well on this weapon. And while we're looking at it, let me just say that this has an amazing look in first person. I think it looks 100 times better than the vanilla Institute laser rifle. I especially love the little Institute Picatinny rail on this thing. It looks so cool. I really can't stop looking at this thing. Really excellent work by Mikolov. Now then, as usual, we need to talk about all of the really cool attachments available in this mod, and there's some really really awesome options here. Starting off with the capacitor section, we have standard up through overcharged, pretty similar to any laser weapon in the vanilla game. It's just going to give you a nice damage boost up to a maximum of 42 to both your ballistic and energy damages compared to the standard 24. But we get some really cool options when we move on to some of the more aesthetic changes, like the barrels. We have the short barrel, the splitter barrel, which has a really cool mesh up on the front there, the automatic barrel, which looks pretty cool as well, the sniper barrel, which has a really nice profile. I think this is my favorite of all of them, at least it is aesthetically. And then we have improved versions of each of these options, which do not change the aesthetics at all, but that's just fine. They do improve the stats a good bit, giving you some nice trading options. Most of these are pretty standard to what you'd find on, say, the vanilla plasma rifle or laser rifle, but it's still cool to see them remeshed with their own interesting and unique designs. Now for the stocks, we have a handful of different options. We have the standard grip, which somehow just looks way better than the vanilla option. We have the comfort grip, which adds a nice little loop to it. We have the standard stock, which I am in love with. I think this is so much better than the vanilla Institute rifle. And then we have some variations on that with the marksman stock, which adds a nice little cheek rest, and a recoil compensating stock for the automatic barrel. And then we have the sight options. Now, most of these are going to be exactly what you'd expect, but they do have some nice tweaks on them that make them a little bit special, at least visually. We have the standard iron sights, and then we have a short scope, which I believe has been tweaked just a little bit from the standard vanilla design. We have the reflex sight, which looks pretty standard, but if we turn it, you'll actually see that it's a little bit more of a hexagon shape than the vanilla one. We saw that actually in Mikolov's remesh of the Institute weapons. And then we have the medium scope and the long scope, which share the same asset as the short scope, of course. Then night vision versions of all of those scopes, which do actually have a tweaked mesh. They add a nice little wire to the top there that looks pretty cool. And then we have the recon scope. And I have to say, I love Mikolov's design for the recon scopes. Embedding them inside of the reflex scope looks super cool and adds that splash of color that makes them just look a little bit better. Now then, it is of course time for our damage test. We'll be checking out how this weapon actually performs in combat. We'll be using 2 Deathclaws as our standard damage baseline. Now I know this thing does share vanilla stats with the plasma rifle, but I want to see if any of the attachments have some different improved stats that maybe are a bit different, and we'll be only doing 2 tests today. We'll be doing the standard version of the weapon, no attachments, no perks, and then we'll be doing a fully upgraded one where I pumped in all of the attachments to get the best possible damage out of this thing. Let's go ahead and see how it performs on this standard Deathclaw here. Again, no attachments and no perks. Let's see how it does. And in what was about 23 shots, some of those weren't the most optimal shots. I wasn't hitting the weak point every single time, but that's pretty good, especially considering that we are using fusion cells instead of plasma cartridges. Now then, let's see how we do when we fully upgrade this thing with the best possible damage we can get out of it, giving us about 60 ballistic and 60 energy damage. And that was absolutely excellent. We took down that Deathclaw in only 6 shots, making this thing way better, and we don't even have any perks on. If you were to throw on the Rifleman perk, this thing would be absolutely shredding Deathclaws in only about 3 shots. And that's pretty crazy considering that Deathclaws actually have a pretty high energy resistance, so pretty cool and definitely very efficient even in the late game. So yeah, that is the Institute Plasma Rifle by Mikolov, a very cool, very lore-friendly weapon that I'd highly recommend picking up, especially if you're looking to flesh out your Institute leveled lists. The Institute being such an advanced faction, I can't see them sticking to just one boxy old laser rifle, so it's cool to see some other new weapons to implement into their level list to add just a little bit more variety. I absolutely adore this weapon. I love seeing what some really talented authors can make using just vanilla assets, and I gotta say, I like some of these attachments so much, I think I'm gonna beg Mikolov to allow me to use them in the attachment pack. It's gonna help save on space, and I think some of them would look absolutely beautiful on the Institute weapons. It'll really help flesh out that boxy look that they have in the vanilla game. Now then, if you want to try out this mod, it will be linked down in the description below, and guess what? It's available for not only PC, but Xbox as well. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to drop a rating if you did. It helps out the channel a whole lot, and consider subscribing if you haven't already for more videos just like this. Big shout out to all of my patrons for supporting every single video, and of course a very special thank you to Captain Chaos, Helljumper, Indecisive Wolf, Jackie Noid, John Moreland, Cushy, Logan Rigmaiden, Microhan, Moonlit Gamers, Official Z Fexer, Feed, Timmy76, and Youth RC, and of course Voider for joining that tier 3 Patreon membership. If you'd like to support the channel over on Patreon, you can do so using the link down in the description below, but it is completely optional. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Peace!